Hey, it's our first show of 2026, and I have a challenge for Connecticut. Can we have 1 week of no corruption? This is Inside Investigators Inside Update. I'm the editor, Connor Dragotis, and today I'm joined by Marc E. Fitch, senior investigative reporter here. Marc, I feel like that's a tough question to ask. My understanding is that, spoiler alert, there has been corruption in Connecticut this week. We did not meet that goal of no corruption. Am I right in saying that?
It's not this week. It's been the last, 5 years. I mean, when you start piling it all up, I mean, my God. And yeah, this week we saw the forensic audit of the Blue Hills Civic Association and Senator McCrory's involvement in essentially laundering millions of dollars to his friends and potentially his girlfriend. And I honestly, I think it's a case that is bigger than the Costa Diamantis case, and just because it's not sliding, $50,000 under the restaurant table, I mean, this is bigger and this is millions. So yeah, I think that's, it's a shameful moment in the legislature's history. And the fact that there seems to be a lot of shamelessness in this. Nothing is happening. No one is having any consequences. So, we'll see. I mean, the federal investigation is still going on. Maybe there will be consequences down the road, but it doesn't seem like the Democrats in the General Assembly feel like doling any out themselves.
I'd like to stick with this topic for a few minutes before we get to your investigation, right? It's the investigation you put out this week. It's called Dead Equals. It's about bid rigging, allegedly costing towns millions of dollars. So we are going to get there. But what you just said is so important. We saw news this morning. I think it was the New Haven Register. I want to give them credit for the coverage. They basically reported that McCrory is, at this point, going to keep all of his leadership positions. He is not going to be shown the door for what is, at this point, clear corruption. I mean, there isn't even any question about this. I don't need to put the word allegedly in, as I so often do when I'm doing the editing part of my job. It's pretty damn clear what's going on. We've talked before about, lacking political will to take action and, where the proper role of journalism is here. But I mean, prognosticate a little bit. You've been in Connecticut for longer than I have. Why wouldn't you want to show someone the door and do it really, really quickly?
Well, I mean, you can't get rid of an elected official short of them being arrested, which, in this case, I mean, how that's not in the works is beyond me. But what Democrat leaders could do is take him out of his leadership positions on key committees like the Education Committee, where he's been there for a while, and they're refusing to do so. I have no idea why. I mean, McCrory has also announced his run for his re-election bid for state senator. He's got at least one challenger in Miriam Khan, who is looking to take that Senate seat. But it shocks me the level of shamelessness here, in that this is all out there. This is all being publicly reported. There's been investigations, there's ongoing investigations, and still nobody has the decency to either force him to step aside, or he doesn't have the decency himself to step down.
I had a really interesting conversation with a friend of mine yesterday, and the topic of corruption came up. We were kind of getting into this, and what we do at Inside Investigator, but corruption is a pretty widespread topic across the country right now. And he dropped his 2 cents that the opposite of corruption is integrity. And I like that framing generally. I think there's a number of different words that you could kind of slot in depending on the situation, but integrity definitely seems to be lacking here, as it so often is when we talk about corruption. Do the right thing, right? Step up, have the conversations. At the very least, if you do want to maintain your innocence, have the decency and integrity to sit down, right? I mean, we can't get comment. we can't get response. We're reporting on this. We are doing our due diligence to reach out and ask the questions that, frankly, the public deserves to know, right? I think that's part of our job to at least ask those questions, but not actually taking the time to respond is such a lack of integrity. It is such a corrupt act in and of itself, in my opinion. And I really appreciated that word being surfaced yesterday in that conversation. It helped clarify a few things for me.
Well, and I'm shocked that this story hasn't got any national traction at this point, because with all the controversy surrounding how ARPA funds were distributed to nonprofits, these are ARPA funds that were distributed to nonprofits at his direction and sending them to someone with whom he potentially had a romantic relationship. I mean, they haven't even denied the fact that they had a romantic relationship. So, and by my own accounting, because I've gone back and done all the numbers, I think Sheba and Sansere Cicero have got about, what was it, $3.4 million in state and federal money directed their way by Senator McCrory. So how that doesn't make national news sites is beyond me.
It's maybe indicative of media diet too. I know we've talked about that before, but we put a lot of we trust our readers to care about their media diet. It's one of the reasons we exist. It's not just that Connecticut lost 50% of its newsroom since 2004, so there's just not as much on the plate to choose from, but it is about quality. And I think that when we see what's out there, there's a lot of people that this is a complicated issue. I think you could summarize it in a couple quick headlines and do the blurb on the national scale, but at the same time, double checking this, I feel like maybe there are some reporters who are paying attention and maybe just they're waiting for things to become a little more clear, get that federal investigation a little bit further down the road. I think that we're well positioned, obviously, to provide those details. And of course, every single one of our articles is simply free to use, which is something that I would encourage, right? If you're a national news outlet and you want well-written, detail-oriented reporting on this, take it. It's free. Marc and I think Catherine are the two who have written about this. It's really important stuff. And especially as you look at all of the stuff unfolding in Maine, Minnesota, frankly, it's everywhere. This should be on more people's radar because I'm guessing it's also happening elsewhere.
Oh, for sure.
Let's move away from this. Thank you for, I guess, indulging me with a news topic to start this. I know we try to focus these episodes on investigations, but that is a particularly important one. And I think we are listening to our viewers and listeners of this show, and we want to make sure that we're getting to a variety of topics, that we're answering questions. We do have at least one question pending here that we'll get to later in the episode. But let's talk about dead equals. You wrote about a bid rigging scheme allegedly costing town millions, and it's not the typical bid rigging stuff that we talk about. This is something else entirely, a whole new way to bid rig, if you will. Give us the lowdown.
Sure. So this has to do with school roofing projects, which I've come to learn a bit about during my month or two working on this story. And basically what's being done is that, when a town is going to re-roof their school, they bring in an architect in an architectural firm to draw up the specifications as to what they're going to need and how they're going to need it and all this kind of stuff. And the specifications are being written up in such manner that it either names a particular manufacturer or sets the specifications so that only this one particular manufacturer can fill them. And that manufacturer is Garland. It's a company that has been implicated in this exact same thing in California and Minnesota in the past. And it is a form of bid rigging, because what's being done, and this stuff is being done, in open violation of the state's bidding rules, which towns have to abide by if they want to get state funding. And it is a form of bid rigging, essentially making it so that only one manufacturer, roofing manufacturer, can be used by the contractor. So the contractors, and like to their credit, there's a couple contractors who have filed lawsuits about this just in this past year, like 4 or 5 lawsuits in the past year about this exact thing. And what's happening is the towns are ending up in court and they're having to go back to rebid the projects with the correct, specifications and abiding by the correct bidding rules. But here's where the state really gets involved, is because the Department of Administrative Services is in charge of reviewing all these specifications so that and approving that everything has been done according to plan and according to the right rules so that the town can receive their grant money. In essence, the Department of Administrative Services is overlooking this issue. It's costing the towns a lot of money because this particular manufacturer, their stuff is pretty expensive. And, it's not only costing the towns money, but it's costing the taxpayers money. It's costing, the taxpayers in that town money, and it's costing statewide taxpayers money because it's all state money that's going towards these things.
Who should be accountable for this? I mean, in some ways, my reading of this is that they are trying to make things easier, right? It's a streamlining argument in some ways. Oh, if we write it this way, it cuts down on the work of having to find these dead equals, but it's also a way that they could say, hey, well, we already have this partnership, so we can move the ball forward. Yes, there's the financial addition, but like, why is this happening in the first place? What's the incentive here?
I think it is a matter of just laziness on everybody's part. So according to state bidding rules, when specifications are drawn up, either the specifications have to be general enough that contractors can go out and find their own manufacturers that basically can fulfill this these specs, or if it's going to name a specific manufacturer, in this case Garland is typically the manufacturer that is named, the architect has to provide 2 equal companies that can provide the same materials or the same can do the same thing. They're called is providing equals, so that the contractor can submit their bid based on whatever whatever manufacturer they want to use or that they're contracted to use. So, and that can be a little difficult. I mean, it's easier to just say, hey, Garland is the basis of design, and a lot of architects have been putting in, they'll put Garland as the specified manufacturer, and then they'll say, or approved equal. That is not allowed under state bidding rules. If you're going to name a manufacturer, you have to name 2 other equals that a contractor can choose from. The other thing that's being done is Garland is being named as as a specified manufacturer, and then something is being 2 other companies are being offered, but those companies are actually dead equals. And what dead equals means is that they can provide the product, but they don't actually work in this area, and it's not actually possible to get those materials. So in a case that I highlighted in the story in Danbury, Garland was the basis of design, and then 2 other companies were offered up as equals. One of those companies is in California, and it was that company, one of their architects wrote to the contractors that were bidding on the Danbury project saying, no, we're not coming out there to do this project. This is a form of bid rigging, like it's being specified. They're offering us up so that you don't have a choice whether or not to go to Garland. And then the second company that was offered as a dead equal, they didn't actually produce the product that was specified in the architectural plans. So what happened was, there was, a particular company, Greenwood Industries, took Danbury to court over this. the whole project ended up being scrapped and redone, and it became a moot point. But this has been done over and over again. Those same two contractors, the one on the West Coast and the one that doesn't actually produce the materials, were offered up by the same architect at another school location. So once again, it was Garland as the basis of design, and here's two other manufacturers who can't actually do this stuff. So it's it. I think it is a matter of just like, hey, let's just get this done. Let's just get the state to sign off on this. And the state doesn't want to deal with it. The state doesn't want to sit there and say, hey, no, guys, you did your bidding wrong. Go back and do it again. They just want to get the money out the door. And so, I mean, one of the defenses that one of the architects offered was that his plans got approved by 9 committees. That's not a defense. That's an indictment, because the fact that 9 committees looked at this and said, "Oh yeah, no, this works. This actually follows the rules, and this meets the specifications." That's the problem, because there's 9 committees that are approving things being done the wrong way, and it is costing taxpayers money. A situation, one of the Creek schools in Hartford, they actually did it the right way. The architect went in. He said, "Hey, Garland is the basis of design, but here's 2 other equals." And the company that won that bid used one of the other equals, and it ended up saving the Creek school system $400,000. When we have schools that are constantly clamoring for more money, if they're throwing away $400,000, $600,000, $800,000 by not doing their public bidding correctly, their constituents, their taxpayers should be upset by that.
And it's also resources for kids, ultimately.
Yes.
I mean, that's the thing. It's not like, there's an, potato. Is there an infinite amount of money that you can extract to do these projects? I don't know. We could talk about taxes another time, but the issue is that when you have a budget, $400,000 could be going toward school activities to actually improve the educational results, without a doubt. You mentioned some of the, I guess, the committees, the state review. There are safety nets that are in place for reviewing bidding, hypothetically, supposedly, to make sure. That's where I'm going with this. Could you help us understand what those safety nets are supposed to be and why they aren't working?
Well, the specifications have to be signed off on by the chief state architect, which he's been signing off on them plenty. Did not respond to our questions. And his argument is basically like, this is the municipality's problem. They're doing the bidding. They're putting out the bids. This is their problem. But he's approving the specifications. And not only him, but the school construction council. Everybody's aware of this because the contractors have made this known, but they're still signing off on school construction grant money going towards these projects that were improperly put out for bid. So everybody knows that this is a problem. They've gotten emails, they've gotten text messages. Hell, the Attorney General, the division of the Attorney General's office that is in charge of investigating this exact thing is aware of this and has done nothing. So, once again, this is a case where just everybody wants to shut their eyes to it. I mean, we've got, Democrats are just kind of hoping that this McCrory thing goes away, that they can survive this, and that, we're just going to keep him where he is and see how it goes. We have a similar issue where it's just people are not making the effort. They're not paying attention. They're not doing their jobs. And that's what it comes down to.
All right. So you're kind of perfectly leading into the reader question that we had. And I want to thank everyone who's engaged over the last couple of weeks. We put out a couple interesting social questions, and one of them was just about our mission to end corruption through investigative journalism. It got something like 1,300 comments on it of people, just offering tips, offering their thoughts of what we should look into. And then there were also this group of folks who were talking about basically what boiled down to the role of journalism. And I think what you just talked about is really key, because there's all these people who are aware of it, but the people who I think are not aware of it that we speak directly to are the people who are footing the bill, the general
Yep.
public who are out there, who likely are not paying attention to school roofing project bidding standards across the state, with good reason. Hopefully you shouldn't have to, right? Because you have other better things to do in your life, right? We're very, very interested in supporting what you can do in the absence of corruption, but we need to make you informed. We have to put that out there. And the question that came out was, why aren't you, of course, saying, looking at their bank accounts, which we can't do. Why aren't you, we'll come back when you put someone in jail. We can't put people in jail. That's not a power that we have as journalists. But what we can do is bring vital information that people who are in positions of power, elected, appointed, hired into, when they are doing things that are horrifically wrong, that are stealing money from your pocket, we can at least make you aware of them. And Marc, we talked offline. If you could continue a little bit here about your thoughts on the role of journalism, and ultimately what readers should go do instead of expecting that we are somehow going to miraculously have the a sheriff's badge giving us the power to throw people in prison. What is the role of journalism, and ultimately where should those kind of complaints be directed?
The role of journalism is to bring awareness and context to whatever issues are going on in the public sphere. We generally focus on state and municipal issues, and so we're finding things through tips and bringing them to public awareness. Now, why do we bring them to public awareness? So that the public can make a decision when it comes to who they want handling their government and who they want handling their tax dollars. If we come out with a story and people are upset about it, it's not on us to fix it. We are not a policy institute. We're not a policy organization. And I'm not running up to the Capitol to tell people how to fix things. That's their job, and a lot of the lawmakers, there a lot of them are good people, but they also have their own jobs. They're not aware. Your state representative is not necessarily aware of everything that is going on in state government that is 50,000 people strong. And we bring it to the forefront so that not only the public can respond, but lawmakers can respond. And what they do with that in their response, that should signal to their constituents, where they stand on issues. So if people want change, if people are upset by something, contact your lawmaker. They're the ones that have the power to actually do something. And it's their job to be handling this kind of stuff. It's their job to come up with public policy. It's their job to hold hearings on these matters. I've gotten it throughout my career, is like, people come asking for help. I can't, I can tell your story, but I can't necessarily help you. I mean, that might help, but it's not going to fix it. If you want to fix something, you got to either, get your lawmaker to do something or vote differently. I don't know what to tell you there, but
yeah, I also want to, jump in, because I think that you are maybe more optimistic about the legislative process than I am. Like you properly identify, we're not a policy organization. We aren't going to be out there passing laws. We could certainly help inform people about key information to pass laws. But there's also a secondary problem here, which is, when you see something like the McCrory situation unfold, and this is one of many where we see legislators acting in a corrupt manner, where we see public employees who you are paying act in a corrupt manner. You also need to think about other, solutions outside those halls. I mean, civil disobedience, jury nullification, thinking about what power you have in your community to make change. Who are the people who you are surrounding yourself with? What kind of, you have Marc's bid rigging article, dead equals here. how many times is that being printed off and presented to those people? I think it does. Like, these are tools in the tool belt for change. And what we are obviously not going to do is say, well, here's the policy solution. And again, we're not a policy organization, but what we are going to do is we're going to give you information to arm yourself and drive the change that you want to see. And spoiler alert, that's an anti-corruption agenda. That's that's what we do. That's it.
Share the story. You need more people reading it. Like you need to raise awareness. And if you want to see change, share one of the stories. I'm not doing this to try to grow our audience or whatever. It would be nice. But we're not the only ones doing the work either. There's other news organizations in the state that are doing great work, bringing up issues of corruption. Share their stories too.
Yeah.
Get the news out there, because a lot of people, I understand that they're sick of the news. I'm a bit sick of it myself, and they don't want to pay attention. But there's change that can be affected right here in Connecticut, and the only way that's going to happen, though, is if more people are made aware of what's going on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have about 100,000 readers a month, little less on average, I think. And then, we also, if you look at the impression ratio, which I know is a soft metric, but, our content reaches 1.5 to 2 million people every single month. And it's interesting to see, that funnel of how it goes, because ultimately you reach people, they read the article, then what happens, right? Like, there are additional steps to getting rid of corruption. And, our job is to root it out, not to eviscerate it. And I think that there's a secondary action there. And, we're always looking for people who want to point this stuff out. And frankly, if we love building partnerships and alliances around anti-corruption. It's a beautiful thing. If you can help get us tips, if you can help, frankly, we get a lot of tips where we wish that we just had more people and more hours in the day to investigate and tackle those, right? There are many ways that we can be working together to end corruption in the state of Connecticut and beyond. And it's a really essential bit of work, especially when you look at our headlines. But also, as Marc pointed out, a lot of people doing good work in this state. And there's a lot of corruption being uncovered every single day. Marc, I'm going to wrap up here in just a second. Mm-hmm. Anything else that you want to throw out here about McCrory, your investigation, or heck, anything else? Let us hear it.
Like I said, I think the McCrory thing is just going to get bigger and worse. I think I think it in scope it is more egregious and worse than the Diamantis case. As far as the bid rigging story, municipalities need to pay attention to this because they're selling themselves short. They're reaching out to and contracting with architects who are not doing their job properly. I mean, it's just, it seems like a very complicated issue. And like when I was first presented with it, it seemed extremely complicated and I was a little daunted by it. But what it really came down to was very simple. These are the rules. They're not being followed. The rules are very simple. If you name a manufacturer, you have to name two equals, and you are not allowed to write or approved equal, and you're not allowed to write specifications so specific that only one manufacturer can fill them.
Is it boards of education or boards of selectmen who make those decisions? Like, who should be forwarded this article to read?
It would probably be boards of education. Generally, what they do is they set up a committee, like a construction committee. Like, all right, so school roofing project, we're gonna have the school roofing committee, and it's gonna kind of go through them. But just public, municipal officials, they need to be aware of this because they could be saving money, And hey, sometimes Garland might be the best manufacturer for a particular contractor. It's nothing, but it shouldn't be written so that they're the only manufacturer for a contractor.
Let's put a pin in it there. Thank you for tuning in to all of you. We'll be back in 2 weeks. And until then, please don't be corrupt.